Welcome to Cambridge Street United Church. As Christopher mentioned, my name is Walt. I've been the custodian here for over 9 years now. It is a pleasant and interesting job, and much of that has to do with this building itself. I am fascinated by history, and working here, I'm surrounded by history every day. Take this baptismal font you can see in front of you for one example. It has been in service since 1921. Just think of how many lives have been christened with water from this bowl, and how many have already long since run their course. Yet the font remains, left behind, as this building was left behind by the people who brought it into being so many years ago. You have to wonder sometimes what else might have been left behind. A brief history. Cambridge Street congregation had its beginnings in 1832, holding services in a log cabin that doubled as a schoolhouse at the corner of William and Wellington Streets, just 1 block southeast of here. By 1871, the congregation had grown and flourished to the point where they had the means to erect this impressive building at the staggering cost, if you can believe it, of $12,000. The original building was only as wide as these pillars you see and ended at the wall behind me. But just 15 years later, in 1886, as the congregation continued to grow, it became necessary to enlarge the space. What a feat of engineering it was to break into the existing walls, insert these pillars, move the walls outwards, and reassemble them as you see today, all the while supporting this massive roof overhead. To me, it was an astonishing feat. At that time, the back wall was opened up to accommodate the church's first pipe organ. This gallery was added, and a new sloped floor, and all these pews were installed, each pew stamped with the date of manufacture, 1885. In 1930, there came a further expansion with a grand new entrance, and to the west behind me, a parlor room, choir room, classrooms, and offices. And then in 1957, there came an expansive addition to the north, featuring a fully equipped gymnasium that doubled as a movie theater, a theatrical stage, a professional-grade kitchen, and numerous further offices and classrooms. It has become a sprawling complex with many nooks and crannies, architectural anomalies, and hidden places where a custodian could slip away and have a nap, if he were so inclined. But it is back here in the sanctuary where it all began that this building story is told. Try to imagine how many weddings have taken place here over the course of 147 years. How many brides have walked down this aisle? Imagine how many funerals, how many caskets have waited in this space right in front of me. Imagine how many services. For most of its existence, this building would have been packed to capacity every Sunday. For some, this was their only sanctuary. Imagine the tens of thousands of souls that have passed through this place, through the turning of 2 centuries, the passing of 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and countless other conflicts and upheavals, the ever-shifting societal and cultural mores. They came here for comfort and enlightenment, to pray and to worship, to mourn and rejoice. These walls are steeped with the residue of their experiences. And if you listen very carefully, you can still hear their voices echoing in the stillness. Tens of thousands of souls. They all sat exactly where you are all sitting today. Now, my time here began with 2 weeks of training under my predecessor, Garth. But it wasn't until the morning of the last day that Garth and our office administrator, Pam, told me about Hector. Hector is the nickname that has been given to the church's resident ghost. There are many in the congregation over the years who believe they have seen a ghost. Most of the rest of us have at one time or another certainly heard one. Interestingly enough, we learned not long ago while doing research for a historical presentation that a man died during the original construction of this building, fell from the rafters here. Perhaps it is the spirit of this person that people have been seeing. Perhaps it is the spirit of many, because truth be told, despite the singularity of the name, Hector is not necessarily alone. Ghosts have been seen and heard here in many guises: men, women, children, even a cat. But as we don't know the proper names for any of these apparitions, they have all been lumped together into a single entity, Hector. Now, whether one ghost or many, real or imagined, Hector has become a convenient scapegoat for the many strange and sometimes downright inexplicable things that do indeed take place in such an old building. Weird noises, doors that seemingly open and close by themselves, furniture that seemingly rearranges itself, mysterious vapors visible only in photographs, puddles that seemingly form from no discernible source, things that go missing and then just as randomly reappear. Hector has hidden my keys on me more times than I care to admit. Now, I'm not a superstitious sort, far from it. In fact, I tend to be skeptical of the common idea of ghosts. But after that conversation that morning with Pam and Garth, I don't mind telling you, I was spooked. And that afternoon, when Garth went home and I officially took over as custodian, that feeling lingered. Little did I realize how quickly my first encounter with Hector would come. I was standing right here in this very spot, engaged in my first independent duty as custodian, cleaning a bit of a stain off the carpet. Ghost stories still circulating in my mind, when suddenly something touched me from behind, a definite physical sensation. I whirled around to see what it was, but there was nobody there. Hector, I wondered. And then it happened again. And that's when I realized I had my cell phone in my back pocket and it was set on vibrate. Okay, that was no ghost, but it was the first, it freaked me out a little bit, and it was the first of a multitude of things that have freaked me out a little, and sometimes a lot, over the ensuing years. Take this incident from just a little while later, for example. I was vacuuming in the gallery. It was a dreary gray fall day, the lights were off, it was dim in the sanctuary. Suddenly I stopped in my tracks, because down here in the shadowy choir loft, seated in a back pew, I saw the figure of a young girl. She was dressed all in black. She had long dark hair, and most startlingly, her face was glowing. It took me a moment to realize it was my daughter who dropped in for a visit, and while she was waiting, she was on her cell phone. It was a light from the phone on her face that lit it up and made it look... Okay, neither of those are ghost stories, but that is not to diminish the many things that happen here that are not so readily explained, the many things that make a person stop and go, huh. I mentioned doors behaving oddly. A few years ago, a neighborhood lady was out walking her dog late one evening, not a member of the congregation, and as she passed in front of the church, the front door suddenly began to rattle violently, as if there was someone inside trying to get out. It only happened briefly and then stopped. But it so unnerved this woman that the next day she sought out the head of our property committee, hoping for some sort of explanation of this occurrence. He had none to give. You see, the church had been closed the previous evening. There was no one in the building. And then there are the 4 cupboard doors in Pam's office. Every now and then, they will all swing open at the exact same time. If it was just one door, that'd be easy to explain, faulty latch perhaps. But all 4 doors creaking open all at once? The first time this happened to Pam many years ago, she fled the office in fright, and it took her a good half hour to recover the courage to re-enter. It has happened to her a number of times since, and once to our former minister, who seemed dubious of Pam's story until it happened to him on an occasion when he was alone in the office. Pam just has gotten used to this. It's just Hector playing his tricks, like the tricks he plays on our security system. A little over a year ago, we had cameras installed in the areas of the 4 entrances to the church. These cameras, so that when Pam's alone in the building, she can see who might be entering via a monitor in her office. These cameras are motion activated, meaning that naturally that they will only start filming if something moving is detected within their field of vision. They are also equipped with night vision capabilities so they can see in the dark. Every morning, when Pam arrives for work, she'll start up her computer, and her security window will open up and let her know that motion had been detected numerous times through the night. But whenever she checks the footage, there's nothing to see. Only empty hallways, empty stairwells. Who knows what is disturbing this camera through the night? We just blame Hector, as we blame Hector for so many things. Those of us who work here, who spend the most time here, have gotten quite used to Hector. We'll even talk to him sometimes. Good morning, Hector. Hector, is that you lurking around in the darkness? Hector, did you make this mess on the floor? But those whose encounters with the ghosts are less frequent often find it more difficult to dismiss these experiences. I know one gentleman, an older fellow, member of the congregation, who refuses to enter the church alone. And then there are the experiences of our summer helpers. Every year, for the last several years, the church has hired 2 students through the summer to help with maintenance and other activities during the quiet months of July and August, and to fill in for Pam and myself when we're away on vacation. For the last 2 years, we have hired a student by the name of Virginia, a high school student. Virginia is an excellent student, a very smart girl, a good worker, not one prone, I would think, to flights of the imagination. Hector really seems to like Virginia, because whenever she's here, strange things seem to happen. On one occasion, on a Friday when Pam and I were away and Virginia was alone in the building, manning the office, she noticed the motion detector symbol flash on one of the cameras. This camera was aimed at the stairwell leading up from the sanctuary, the same stairs you would have taken when you entered the building. But when Virginia looked at it, at first she didn't see anything. And then her blood ran cold, because she saw what looked like a dark shadow descending from upstairs, down the stairs, through the screen, and disappearing in the direction of the office, whereupon the motion detected symbol flashed off. Needless to say, Virginia did not dare leave the office for the rest of that day. And then there was the incident of the piano. Another Friday, again Virginia was alone, when she heard a piano playing somewhere in the building. This is not uncommon, as we, members of the congregation and our musical guests, will often come here to make use of the 5 pianos and 1 electric keyboard we have scattered throughout the building. But usually they will announce themselves first at the office, and Virginia had not seen anyone enter by any of the cameras. As it was near the end of her day, she had sought out the source of the music, tracking it down to the piano that is in a meeting room just down this hallway. Stopping outside the door, Virginia called out to let the person know that she would be closing up soon. But there was no response. The music just kept playing. So Virginia went to enter the room. The moment she put her hand on the doorknob, the music stopped. Virginia opened the door to see that the piano was there, but there was no living soul in the room. Virginia fled back downstairs, and she may have left work just a little early that day. And then there's the strange movements up in the attic from where that man fell so long ago. If you look up, you will see 3 architectural features in the ceiling. These are air vents. They knew what they were doing in the 19th century when they designed these buildings. These vents were designed to draw the hot summer air up into the attic and out vents on either side of the building. For some, in the wintertime, these vents were blocked with insulation, but for some reason, years ago, long before I started here, this practice of opening them in the summer was stopped, and the vents remained closed year-round. It was as if they had forgotten or abandoned the practice. But 3 summers ago, we decided to open the center vent to restore it to its original function and hopefully increase the ventilation here during the summer, the hot summer. While I was pulling out the old and filthy insulation, some of it fluttered down and made a bit of a mess in the carpet here. But what was interesting was once I'd removed all the insulation, I found that I had a fantastic view up there of the whole sanctuary. I could see everything, could watch everything. What was really interesting was at the very bottom of that vent, I found a newspaper from 1907. Here it is here. Sunday School Times, July 27th, 1907. How on earth did that get up there underneath all that insulation? Perhaps Hector enjoys a little light reading while he's keeping an eye on everything down here. You might think that's a funny idea, but listen to this. The 2 summers Virginia was here, on one occasion each summer when she happened to be in the sanctuary, bits of insulation fluttered down from that vent. It had not happened the entire year before she was here. It did not happen at all the entire year between summers. It has not happened since. I leave it to you to decide what it is up there that is disturbing the insulation. I could be here all night telling you stories like this, but our time is limited, so I'll just tell you about the strangest thing that ever happened to me. Behind me, you'll see Cambridge Street United Church's pipe organ. It replaced the original organ in 1913, and it is an amazing machine. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, I certainly wasn't until I started working here, but in a 3-story chamber behind this functioning facade, there is a virtual forest of further pipes, over 2,000 pipes. Pipes of all shapes, sizes, and materials. Some made of tin are no thicker than a pencil. Others made of wood are as big as chimneys. And all together, powered by the original blower down in the basement, they produce the thunderous palette of sounds that have guided the emotions in this building for over a century. I play a little piano, and every now and then I like to dabble on the organ. And so it was one noon hour while Pam was out for lunch and I was alone in the building, I came up here to try my hand at Bach's Toccata in D minor, perhaps the most famous piece of organ music ever written. Some of you may recognize the opening refrain. It was the dead of winter. All the windows were closed. The church's furnace was running at full capacity. It was warm in the sanctuary. I was focused on my playing when all of a sudden a blast of cold air washed over me from behind. It was so startling, I immediately stopped playing and spun around to see what might have caused it. But there was nothing to see. My first thought was that one of the windows had fallen open and a blast of Arctic air had washed in. But the windows were all closed. I waited to see if it would happen again, but there was nothing. And if you're thinking that it might have come from the vent up there, this happened long before the insulation was removed. I really have no explanation for that, except that perhaps Hector did not appreciate the way I was mangling Bach. Now, I hope you're not too disappointed when I tell you that I personally have never seen a ghost here. I have been in every corner of this building, from the attic, as I've mentioned, to the medieval dungeon-like basement. I've crawled under the floors, I've wriggled through tunnels, I've been in every dark place in this building and have never seen a ghost. Perhaps I lack the ability to see them that some people seem to possess. But that's not to say that I have not sensed things. The truth is, during my regular work days, this is most often a happy place, full of life, laughter, and goodwill. The rooms occupied by the many groups to make use of our facilities, lovely singing voices, music lessons in the afternoon. You may have heard some of the choir rehearsing just now. The bustle of exuberant children and busy folk rushing up and down the hallways. But on those occasions late at night, when the doors have closed behind the last people to leave after one event or another, and I suddenly find myself alone, something in the atmosphere of the place changes. To me, it is a strange and irksome thing as it offends my perceptions of common sense, and yet it's there. I can't help but feel it, a sudden eeriness. My rational mind tells me that this is some primal instinct that kicks in when one is alone, a heightened awareness of potential danger, but what could be dangerous here? This is a church, after all. Nonetheless, as I begin to make my rounds, securing the building for the evening, I begin to grow uneasy, wary of the shadows and dark corners. I'll begin to see things out of the corner of my eye, things that are moving, yet when I look, there's never anybody there. And the mundane sounds one hears through the course of a day, voices talking, footsteps walking, doors creaking, they sound very different if you hear them when you know that you're alone in the building. And the church's antique heating system, it bangs and it clangs, it moans and it groans. And when you're alone, it begins to sound like it's calling your name. And inevitably, I'll get that sensation we all know, that prickling on the back of my neck, that feeling like I'm being watched. I'll turn and look, but there's never anybody there. And on those occasions, I'll look out over the dim and silent sanctuary, over the row upon row of empty pews, and wonder if something is looking back at me. I love this building, the mystery it contains, what it represents, love, hope, and mystery. Thank you for letting me share it with you.
Ladies and gentlemen,